Hello, I'm Gyles Brandreth, and this is the Rosebud Podcast, where my guest today is someone very special who comes from Ireland. She's a broadcaster, a podcaster, a writer, an influencer, and I think a phenomenon. She's my friend, Angela Scanlon. Enjoy. You will.
Hi, babe.
Hi, Angela Scanlon. Born the 29th of December, 1983. Have I got that bit right?
Well, I mean, I guess we should start from the top. It's actually 1982. Exclusive. Wikipedia has me as 1983. I did shave a year off when I first moved to London because at 29 I thought I was too old. I didn't want to hit 30 too quick.
This is the candid interview. We're going to get it. Oh my God.
I can't, I would never correct you ordinarily, but it's usually people don't lead with that. No. He's ripping up his page. I mean, I know this is visual, but if it's just in your ears, he's ripping up his pages and
I'm ripping up the notes.
Neatly, it should be.
AI, Wikipedia, forget it.
Let's
Angela
go, girl.
Scanlon, born the 29th of December. Is the date at least right?
Capricorn.
Good. Capricorn.
Thank you.
You and Jesus.
Indeed.
Exactly. Or Jesus, as he's sometimes called.
Or Jesus, as he's called in Dublin.
Enough of this banter. Let's get on with it, Angela. This is the first question, and it is simply, what is your very first memory?
I don't know if this is my first. This is the first memory I remember, which I guess it is means it's my first memory. But I'm not sure whether it's because I've retold it that it's the one that's the quickest to pluck. And I am in. It's like a memory of being on holiday in County Cork, and it's not a specific memory, but it's just more of a general kind of I remember us in the car going down. I remember the excitement. I remember the kind of chaos. It just felt wildly exciting.
Who's in the car?
Holiday. Myself, my three sisters, and my parents.
Okay, unpack this.
Yeah.
County Cork. Why are you going to County Cork?
County Cork, we were going to a place called Trebalgan, which I guess is maybe comparable to Butlins. And we had a caravan tied to the back of the car. So that in and of itself was very exciting.
So there are 6 of you in the car, your parents in the front, 4 girls in the back seat.
4 girls in the back, stepping stones or stairs on a seat.
And this is before seat belts?
It would have been pretty rogue, I'd say, in the back.
Do you know what the make of car was?
I think it was a Ford Escort.
Good. So you're in a Ford Escort.
Yeah.
Parents in the front, girls in the back. What age are the different girls and what are their names?
So there is Christine, who's 18 months older than me. I'm second in line. Then Siobhan, who's 3 years younger than me, and then Annette, who's the youngest, who is less than a year younger than Siobhan.
So you've got to be at least 5.
I'm 5-ish, I would
age
say.
For this recollection, which was quite late for a first recollection.
Yeah.
But that's the way it goes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. A late developer.
Late
we may be establishing a theme already.
I think that's fair.
So who is driving the car?
My dad's driving. My dad always drove. And I remember, we definitely didn't have seatbelts because I remember being quite grumpy sometimes in the car and standing, holding on to the seat, kind of defiantly being told to sit down, but I didn't want to sit down. We would have to stop for wheeze every so often, but I did not want a wild wee. It wasn't cool back then.
Roadside wheeze were not for you.
No, even though I needed to do it quite regularly. I had bladder issues as a kid, but
so many children do.
They
You
do.
are excused.
Yeah.
So who were your parents? Since your dad is driving the car, let's talk about him first. What is his name? Is he still with us?
He is, and both of my parents, thankfully, are still here. My dad's name is Phelim.
Phelim?
Phelim, Phelim.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I always thought it was so cool, exotic.
Describe him. Particularly what he looked like, you think, when you were a little girl, your childhood memories of his appearance.
I remember he had hair that was a similar colour to ours, not quite as red, but his locks would have been red. And he was a builder and he would physically work. And I just remember sometimes sitting in his lap and just the size of his hands. He was a kind of bit, not actually like a super big man, but I just always was quite like oddly romantic is the wrong word, but I remember like he was very other in our house because I guess it was all girls. And
You mean very other, meaning different?
yeah, so
And special as a consequence.
it's special, I think.
And you saw his builder's hands as
Yeah.
simply strong hands.
Strong and like I have a picture still of the four of us literally hanging off his back, and he just felt like, even though now as an adult he's not a particularly big man, he just had a very big presence in our house. And he was one of 14 children. And he was like midway in the lineup, I would say. Very diplomatic, a man of few words, but like deeply sensitive, I would say. Although again, that's maybe a later kind of appreciation or understanding.
Have you ever met another man comparable? As good, as strong, as basically decent?
You know what? I think I kind of had a period of time where I maybe didn't appreciate those qualities. And I think I have found in my husband a kind of kindness and a gentleness that maybe for a period I would have thought is like not the vibe.
Good. Tell us about your mother now. What was she called?
My mum is called Mary. It was the year of the Marians, which is a very particular Irish thing, I think. She was born in 1954, and they call it the year of the Marians. I don't know, something to do with the Pope. But like, if you meet a Marian in Ireland, you can basically guess that she was born in 1954.
Oh, how wonderful.
I don't know whether the Pope decided it was his favourite name. That seems unlikely. But was he in...
Well, it was a celebration, I imagine, though, of the Virgin Mary. And
presumably.
But
why 54?
I don't know. I think there was an order of Marians. This is ringing a distant bell. We'll have to do homework on that.
Okay, yeah. Well, it was a thing, but she was Mary. Like, her passport's Mary, and she's called Marian.
Yeah.
But then, weirdly, I was born during the Angelas, which is, like, again, a very specific thing.
In the service. Forgive me, the Angelus.
So, like, every day in Ireland, I actually think it might still be a thing, but, like, just before the 6 o'clock news... in the evening, there would, like, the world would stop and this big old bell would gong out of the tellies all around Ireland, and you would kind of stop and do like a little prayer, I suppose. And I was born at 6:05 while the Angelus would have been
still being played.
Hence.
Because I think the Angelus happens during a service, during Mass. At every service, there is a moment where the Angelus...
Bong!
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
I did
that
it as
is
an
the
altar
moment,
girl.
I think, when your eyes are averted from the host being lifted. I mean, I'm not a Catholic, but
you're very good at the game.
But you clearly are, and your father certainly was, with his 13 siblings.
Yes, absolutely.
So we get back to your mother. She was born in 1954, the year of the Marian. She was called Mary as a consequence.
She was, yes.
And what sort of a person did she become?
She was, like, again, I think she is very kind of artistic. She was quite a wise old soul. Very open, could be quite, hardcore in her own way. But, lived away from her parents. She was born in Galway. My dad was Mayo on the west of Ireland, and they moved to Dublin.
How did they meet?
I think they met in a pub, and he said his name was William initially. I don't know if that was like a way to swerve, but like it became...
Also, if you have quite a complicated name, which is his...
Well, I think it's
failing.
only complicated to your ear. I think it's relatively...
Oh, so it wouldn't have been...
commonplace, but it wouldn't have been alien in Ireland.
Yeah, William may have been more alien in Ireland.
Yeah. But my mum always used to call my dad Phil, actually. So it was always like, which I always thought was really romantic, that she had another like name for him that had literally nothing to do, because he's not Philip or, anything like that.
What did she look like when you were
So she always had short hair, which I always thought was like the mum hairdo, which was again quite a thing that maybe generationally was an expectation. And she had brown eyes, the only one of our family to have like these beautiful, deep brown eyes. And she held the whole show together. She, had 4 daughters. She often would express kind of frustration, I think, at her role as, in her words, being a bloody taxi driver. And so, like, literally picking us up, taking us out, like, because there were kind of almost two batches. She would take me and my older sister Irish dancing. By the time we were finished, she'd be bringing us home, or the other way around, younger sisters dancing, back, in, out, in, out. It was, I would say, relentless. And then obviously the expectation to have, you know, food on the table and all of the things that I know. I'm like, shit, the bed. It's a lot.
Yeah. Picture them together for us as a couple. What were they like? Give us a moment of you remembering them together.
They used to describe themselves as Jack and Vera Duckworth. Maybe a later version was like John and Mary from Father Ted. So they bickered a lot. But in a kind of quite a playful, tender way. Like, I don't ever remember them fighting very much. I remember one fight that they had, which was kind of, felt really significant.
Do you know what that was about?
It was about mass, weirdly.
Not weirdly at all. If you're a serious Catholic family,
yeah,
conscious that you're giving birth to someone during the Angelus.
Exactly.
That you were born in the Marian year.
Yeah. And so she, I think, my mum, her mother was very religious, and she inherited that. And a lot of the time we did too. We all went to mass, rollers in our hair. We like did the thing, and you kind of just didn't question it. And it was at a time when a lot of the scandals were coming out in the church, and my dad was like, no, I'm actually not going to mass anymore. And I just remember it being a kind of, we said that we would bring them up. In fact, we christened them, we did the thing. And I was like listening outside the door, because it was so unusual to hear a kind of like real fight, as I saw it.
They were shouting.
Yeah. It was yeah.
And how old were you at the time, do you think?
I don't know. I imagine I was around 11. Like, it was when a lot of, because I guess there were whispers of things that were a little sketchy with the Catholic Church, but it
this
blew
was to
open.
do with sort of sex scandals and physical violence and the whole thing.
Like absolute
nuns
large
as well as
scale
priests.
abuse.
The whole thing was
Industrial schools and
blown up, and people were discovering this for the first time. Yeah. But you at that stage were a committed Catholic. You'd had your first communion.
I did. I had my confirmation, and so I was just like in the system, I suppose.
But were you also a believer?
I don't know that I.
How old
was
as a Catholic are you when you have your first communion? Quite small, aren't you?
7-ish.
Do you remember the day?
I do remember the day, actually, mostly because of the outfit and the money.
Oh, tell us
So, like,
about the outfit and
I
the
don't
money.
know that I was like touched by the Lord. I think I was basically like, whoa, this is a moment for me. And I inherited the dress, which would have only been 18 months beforehand, and it was beautiful. And my sister had this gorgeous dress, and she was very angelic. She was very, at that time, well behaved. And I was like, are you shitting me? I'm getting the hand-me-down dress. Absolutely not. And so I remember like bargaining with my mum as if I was in the position to do that. And I kind of agreed that I would wear the dress if I could style it my own way. And she was like, okay, what? And so we went to Navan Shopping Centre. And I remember, again, this being quite a like wonderful outing. And I then got a pair of Clark's shoes that I had wanted for so long, and they were black, which I think was like, oh, we're wearing black shoes. And I said, I remember having to fight for my right to wear them because it should be a head to toe white situation. And that was quite a punchy move. And I was like, Mom, I'll be able to wear them to school forevermore. Like, I get a pair of white shoes, they'll be in shit next week, and you'll have to get me another pair anyway in September. So I said, let's get the black ones, and then I'll get loads of wear out of them. So, you know, I spoke to the practical woman in her, and I got the black shoes. And I remember thinking, now I know who I am.
Oh, were you quite a dominant child?
I don't know. I think I was a real mix, actually. I think that dominance maybe masked probably a real like, I think I was very sensitive, and I was very needy, and I was very frightened, actually. Like, when I started school, I remember going to, like, being taken out of the class, like desperately begging to come out of the class so that I could go in to sit beside my sister, like clingy.
And why do you think you were like that? Why was there this neediness? And
I mean, I think some people just have that, and I think I tried to shake it out of myself to problematic levels as years went by. But I don't know. I suppose I never felt quite ready. So a lot of the things that I had to do, that one has to do as a human, as a child, I always felt like, I mean, the only way I can kind of relate it is like a bird being kind of chucked from the nest just a bit too early. I always had the feeling that I wasn't quite prepared. I wasn't quite, I'm nearly there, but I'm not quite there. And then off you go.
give us another moment of that from these early years before you're 11. The example of needing to go into your sister's class is a good one.
Yeah.
But of you feeling this way, an actual incident.
I remember when my granny was still alive, my mum's mum, we would go down, which again, I have like beautiful kind of broad memories of going to her house in Galway, like in the middle of nowhere, and we would just kind of roam the fields. It was very free, and she was like a wonderful presence, I think, in my life, which again, I maybe realised too late. She died when I was maybe 8. And I remember like that adventure, but also having this feeling of it being quite scary going to bed without your parents. And so I would style it out. I was with my older sister, and being told, like, let's say it's Wednesday, your parents are coming tomorrow. So I wake in the morning thinking, they're coming today. So like, it's probably 7 o'clock. And I sit on the end. I just remember so when you got to their house, there was a like ramp up to the house, was kind of up on a height. And so there was 2 large gables, like literally well off the ground. And so I sat on the gable waiting for them to come. But obviously Thursday is Thursday. They're without kids. They probably had a lunch on the way down that was, without someone dragging out of their legs or demanding a wee break or whatever it might have been. And so Thursday just felt like this endless day. And I remember sitting, like not budging from that gable, because today was the day. And so I think I had kind of endured this week that had like lovely moments, but that really was a lot. And I was ready now to meet them. And that day I genuinely thought would never end. And then I thought they would never come. I was like, oh my God, maybe will never come back. And so I think on the surface, I was this lively little kid, like my, uncle used to call me Muscles, and I was very sparky kid, but I think it hid a lot of those kind of fears that I had of that, like anxiety, I guess, as a
Did your
kid.
parents, do you think, understand this?
I think in hindsight, they were surviving with 4 very small children without help. They didn't have nannies. My mother wasn't getting a facial. She was like, self-care was not a thing. I think she was doing an incredible job keeping the wheels between the ditches. And so to have that level of emotional attunement, I think and I masked it really well. I think I became really good at like looking very, she would say things like, you could go anywhere. I could literally put you anywhere. And that I would figure out a way to connect with people, to entertain people, to, make myself at home. So I think I fooled everybody, really.
Your parents, that one row that you remember, listening at the door, did it change things? Because your father has clearly decided, enough of the church, it's not for me. But your mother, because of the tradition, and her mother clung to her faith. It was important to her.
Yeah.
It was the golden thread of her life.
And I think she almost doubled down after that. But then she actually went a similar way. I think these things kept coming up, and she was like, oh, hang on, who am I doing this for again? And I guess she realised she could also have an opinion. For me, I just remember being like, oh, wow, this is possible that they can have two opposing feelings and
still get on. And do they still get on? Are they together?
They're still very much together. Still like Jack and Vera. And but yeah, they've like got a really brilliant shared sense of humour, I think, and sense of adventure. I mean, they're 46 years married a couple of weeks ago, and they were on holidays with my sister and her kids and sent into the family WhatsApp group a picture of them, saw like my nephew in between both of them on a like parachute balloon.
Oh my goodness.
To celebrate their 46th
Well
wedding
done
anniversary.
them.
Amazing. And I thought I kind of loved the they're just kind of defiant in many ways. And like they still have a beautiful spark and kind of zest, I suppose.
Tell me about your three sisters. I have three elder sisters, so I know
You're
what it's
the
like to live with three.
baby.
Well, yes, and they were very distinct personalities. How were you with your three sisters? What were you like? How are you with them now?
We are, I would say, thick as thieves, very different, very different. We all work for ourselves, which is kind of a weird thing that has happened over the years. It wasn't immediately apparent. But yeah, look, I think with four, there's kind of a bit of safety in that tend to be pairings and the pairings kind of change with the seasons. Clashes for sure.
But no big fights. There was never a big fight over the years.
Oh, there were a few.
What was the biggest and what was it about?
Jesus. I'm like, oh my God, people listen to this. I have to like hide this in my algorithm. I'll never be able to go home at Christmas. I would say the biggest fight I remember, my older sister, we used to really butt heads. And she was like stronger than me. I was quite a little runt. And I would come home from school, I'd take off my shoes. I always wanted my feet on the ground. So shoes came off as soon as I came in. She was in her Doc Marten phase and the shoes would stay firmly on. And so I remember she was always quite physical with me. Like she'd be battering me. And I never really fought back because I genuinely thought, do you know what? It's like kind of pointless. I knew that I was out matched or whatever. But I remember this one incident where we were in the kitchen and this had obviously been building and building. And I remember my best friend at the time had a younger brother and I obviously had been telling her about this pattern. And she was like, babe, I torment him. And the only reason I stopped was when he stood up to me. She was like, from the flip side, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, you just need to show your teeth and get stuck in and it will change the dynamic. I was like, okay. So I was kind of being, G'd up for this incoming event whenever that might happen. Anyway, it happened. And I remember being in the like corner of our kitchen and she was like at me and I just switched. I switched and I like went nuts and I don't fully recall what I did, but I didn't have my shoes on so I couldn't kick her shins. And so I remember getting her hands and like turning her hands like this until she was on her knees in the kitchen. And then I kind of like came to and was like, shit. And she got up and she was like, I have a piano exam on Friday. Mama's going to kill you. And I thought, oh shit. And she went to her room. And then I remember running to her room afterwards with ice to try and like help her with what I might have done to her hands. And she was like, you're fucked. And anyway, it did slightly change the game for me. And also it made me realise, oh, maybe I do have a bit of bite in me.
It empowered you.
It did.
And has that been a lesson for life, do you think?
Yeah.
You do stand up. You are
I
counted.
do. It's taken time.
And at school, how were you doing? Or normal school? Were you okay?
Yeah, normal skill, grand. Giddy, I would say. Look, undiagnosed, but the signs are there. I would say ADHD. I was giddy. It was always like, she's great crack, and she's very bright, and she's very smart, but she's quite disruptive. And like, she can make it a little difficult for other people's learning.
All this, you say, this is the you that we see, that we still see.
Yes.
That you, we love, the crack. But clearly, underneath, there is this self-doubt, this insecurity that you've been masking through almost an exaggerated version of the crack.
Yes.
And you've then been helped by Laura to stand up for yourself, with your sister twisting the hands back, so that her failure to be a concert pianist, I met her the other day, and she's still banging on about it, you ruined her life. But there we are.
She's got 4 kids. I think she gets it now.
Yeah.
She's like,
I tell you, having 4 children is no substitute for being a concert pianist playing
This
at
is
Madison
true.
Square Gardens.
I'm so sorry.
So, 4 kids. Is that what life's about? Thought you were a proper feminist. 4 kids. To actually offer that up as the solution to your sister's problems.
No, I'm not. I
Fun.
was saying she will understand the wildness of feral children in a kitchen.
I'm only being playful, of course.
I know you are.
So, at school,
Yes.
you then go to a secondary school. Is it the same school?
Secondary, no, different school.
Are there boys at the second school?
Boys at both.
Oh, both?
Yeah.
So when's your first crush?
Which I think was my mum's like very conscious thing.
yeah.
But she was like, you're 4 girls. And her kind of experience was that girls who went to like single sex schools became kind of obsessed with how special boys were, where she's like, if you know that they stink, then it's fine.
And so what was your first interaction with boys? What did you make of boys?
Oh, I remember. So obviously there were a few lads who were at Irish dancing, but they were generally transpired to be not of my persuasion. However, one of my
What does that entirely mean? They weren't girls either, or they weren't interested in girls?
that one, yeah. And like some of my best friends, but I remember one pal who, his brother, oh my God, I was absolutely mad about. Like, this was the first. Actually, no, I did have a crush before this, but it was like this was love. Like, he was born on the 23rd of June, which is the same birthday as my dad, which happened to be the same birthday as my mother's father.
Oh my God.
So I thought, hang on, I think Raymond Maloney might be the love of my life because it stood to reason, Oh my God. So anyway.
What did he have?
What do you mean?
What did he have? What did he?
Well, he was tanned for a start, which was like very exotic to me, obviously. And he was sporty and he was kind of wild. He was wild and he was good crack.
Same sort of age or a year older?
Exactly the same age. He was in my class. But he was like the hot boy in school. So it was never... I wasn't in the...
Does he know about it? Well, he does now, but did he know about it
I'd
then?
say he knew about it because I was friends with his brother and it was like, oh my God, we all have to go. It was easy to kind of ship us all together. And so, I'd say he was aware. I don't know that it was reciprocal.
So what was your first proper boyfriend?
First proper boyfriend...
The first holding hands and feeling...
He was like a couple of years older, I would say. Oh. And... I had really not been like, I was a late bloomer. And I think I just had never really, I was like very into Irish dancing. I was not bothered. And then I think I kind of bloomed over the summer and was like, this is a new hell that I wasn't quite comfortable with, truthfully. And also echoes of that, oh, hang on, I'm not quite ready for this. Like, I didn't know this was coming.
So how old are you at this age?
I'm leaving cert year, so like 17 probably.
Oh, so you are quite a late developer. And he's then 18 or 19.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I had kissed a few boys at the Gaeltacht and at parties, but I'd never had a, thing.
Yeah. So, and what happened? Did it develop into a relationship?
Yeah, we were together for years. On, off, on, off, on, off. It was quite like, it was kind of first love, intoxicating and toxic and all of the things.
My wife comes from Irish heritage. Her family come from County Cork.
Yeah.
And as I recall, contraception for young girls was a big issue and a big problem.
Yeah.
Was it a problem or issue for you, or had things changed by, we're talking about the year 2000?
I mean, it was available. And I remember my mom having the conversation.
Oh, she told you the facts of life, did she?
Yeah. Yeah, she was actually, there was a lot of openness actually in our family. And sometimes I would do that. I'd be like, let's talk about periods, guys, long before I had mine, because it was safe to talk about it when it wasn't relevant to me. And so I often liked to kind of push people to their edge of comfort. But I think she was aware. I mean, terrified that any of us would get pregnant. Don't come home with a bun in the oven. This was the kind of general, her job as a mother. She would have felt like she had failed had she not prepared us for that. I was on the pill, which sent me absolutely doolally.
Oh, side effect?
I was like a lunatic.
Really?
So I stopped taking it.
Is that a well-known thing?
I think it is a thing, but it's just accepted as a given for women, because what is the other option? Well, there is another option, but,
Gosh.
most of the side effects of contraceptive are held by the woman, whether it's a coil, whether it's discomfort, whatever it is. So I think the general consensus was, well, you can be batshit crazy or you can get pregnant. Choose your flavour.
So you weren't a bit batshit crazy at this time?
I would say I was,
Tell me,
highly emotional.
Tell us about the eating problems that you had at this time. When did they start, and what have you now worked out as the root cause, and how did you come through it?
When did it start? It started, I would say, I was 5th year in school, so 16. And it started very casually. I would say I was dancing. I was completely unaware of my body as anything other than instrument to help me dance. I didn't see it as anything that anyone was looking at. It was just a thing that I got to use. And I had an injury from dancing, so I had to take time off. And I think I was so frightened in many ways by the space, by the fact that was my everything, really. And so I kind of link that as the starting point. But I think I used it before then, just in a way that I wasn't aware of. I was a very picky eater as a kid. I would sit at the table and not want to finish my dinner, and my mum would have to reheat my dinner a number of times until I finished my dinner. And so it did become, again, a kind of tool, I think, that I used without realizing what I was doing. And then it just kind of caught hold, I think, and I used it as a way to I don't know, I suppose, to shrink my world a bit. So that sense of being thrust out of the nest, I think the obsession and fixation and preoccupation with food, in, out, abstaining, purging,
and body image at the same time, or
they're connected. And I think I developed in what felt like overnight. I stopped dancing and suddenly everything that had been kind of kept at bay happened overnight, and it felt like I was out of control. And I think ultimately an eating disorder, an addiction, serves to at least give you the illusion of controlling something or escaping the fear around not being able to control something.
So you're trying to control your body?
I'm trying to control my world, I suppose. If I am so fixated on this, then I don't have to worry about what I'm going to do when I grow up, who I'm going to be with, where I'm going to live, how I'm going to build myself up to become an adult.
And as a consequence of this, you lose weight. What happens? What is the result of it?
Yeah, you lose weight, or you don't if you're binging and purging. I kind of
you were both what we now call anorexic, and there was bulimia as well.
Bulimia, yeah,
where you eat and then reject what you've eaten.
Yeah.
And how long did this go on for?
It went on for, in total, 15 years.
And what, at this early stage, did your parents think about it, and what did they do about it?
Well, they didn't know for a really long time.
But there was an appearance change, was there, or not?
No, not initially. The appearance change would have happened when I had gone off travelling, and I was kind of any of the stability, I suppose, of home was gone, and I had nobody watching in ways. So, and also I think it escalated at times when I went away, because again, this facade and this identity that I built up of being like a bad little bitch who can do anything. I was very brave, I was adventurous, masked a sense of like homesickness that just did not sit well with me. Homesickness was for weaklings, was for, I was a worldly woman. I had ideas, and I wanted a big life. And so the idea of crying home to your parents with homesickness was not a thing. So I rejected any of the deeper feelings that I had around my fear of the world, I suppose.
Did you have therapy? I mean, did you?
I had therapy for 7 years, and
in a nutshell, what was the conclusion?
I mean, I think in a nutshell, it is control. I don't think it can be traced back to any one thing. I think there's a susceptibility. Like in college, I did my...
This is Dublin. You went to Dublin University.
I went to DIT.
And you did business studies on that?
I did business studies, yes. And for my thesis, because I was already aware, and I love fashion, so I read a lot of fashion magazines, and I was already kind of at the, I was deep in it, and my thesis was an exploration into media consumption and its effect on disordered eating. Mm. And so I was very curious. I knew that I didn't want to be stuck with this thing, but I also was aware that it had...
Were you sharing this with anybody else, the problem? Did you share it with your mother, your father, the boyfriend?
No. It was very secret, which is a big part of, I guess, the shame in it, that it becomes this kind of... also I wasn't ready. I think in order to say it out loud, you need to know that there will be extra eyes on you in terms of your behaviour, but also a desire, you would think, from people who love you to want to help you. So it's easier to, if you share it, you need to be, I think, ready to have it looked at, and I wasn't. I was very fond of it in many ways.
It was your companion.
Very
you were controlling your life. So this happens from 15, 16 up till you're about 30 years of age.
Yeah.
And when do you decide to get to grips with it? Mm-hmm. When do you start the therapy? Do you self-refer yourself? How do these problems get solved?
Well, I did. My parents sent me, briefly, there's a show, The Late Late Show, and there was a guy on it, and they were, talked a lot about child psychology, because, look, I had seen Karen Carpenter. We listened to the Carpenters at home. I had seen whatever, stumbled across that biography, and then I was aware of anorexia as a thing that could kill you. I was aware of the seriousness of it, but I think most people thought of it as a kind of, teenage. Girls want to look cute. Like, what's the problem? Instead of that being the symptom of something deeper driving that behaviour, I suppose. But my parents had seen on The Late Late Show this, the Merino Clinic, I think it was called. It was a place in Dublin that was quite an alternative approach to eating disorders. And so I had gone there. But again, I realised in hindsight, I had zero interest. I would go in and be like, Jesus, these are bad. Like, these guys are sick. I shouldn't be wasting their time. So I just wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. And by the time, I suppose, you hit your rock bottom. For me, that was after I had my daughter, because it was almost like, I do not want to...
So you took this into your marriage?
I had switched my eating disorder to work. So the same driving force was just aimed in a different direction, and had been for
just complete the eating disorder then, before it becomes another obsession, is what you're telling us.
Yeah.
So before your marriage, when do you get on top of the eating disorder? So you're no longer throwing up, or no longer fearing you're going to become anorexic. How long did that last?
So I thought, I remember reading a thing that said it took 14 days for the body to regulate after a binge and a purge. And I was like, I was writing, I was styling, I was working for myself, I was working 7 days a week. I was like, I do not have time for this shit. And so I just, in my mind, just gave it up. And so all of the energy and attention and fixation just shifted to work, which was, you know, more lucrative, and people clapped for me, and I have a wonderful career that was driven slightly by the manic kind of focus.
I'm going to ask once more and then we can leave it.
Yeah.
You obviously have thought about this. You had 7 years of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
It has two patterns to it. There's first the eating disorder, and then there is the work obsession.
Yeah.
You have connected the two, in fact,
Same
conflated
thing.
them.
Yep.
You're telling me they're the same thing. What I would like to know is you must have thought about what was there in your childhood, your nature, your parenting that brought this about. You've told me the symptoms, and you've told me how you wanted to control things. What I'm asking you is why.
I mean, I feel like I answered it. I feel like it's too easy to go, that happened to me on this day. I did not have, there was no big event. There was no big trauma with a capital T, as they'd say. I think that I was a deeply sensitive child.
Fine. It's
and that as a result, things that felt manageable for many people felt huge for me. And then this became my kind of accidental choice of coping mechanism. And it grew legs.
Okay, I'll accept that. I knew...
Your Honour.
The first person I knew who had anorexia was a girl who was an actress.
Okay.
Who appeared in a show of mine playing Alice in Wonderland. Yeah. And essentially we went to the second series, and she wanted to do the second series, and she therefore didn't want her breasts to develop. She didn't want to grow up.
Okay.
She was 13, 14, 15. Yeah. And so she did it in order to stay as a child actress.
Okay.
That was what triggered it.
Yeah.
And then it became an issue for her. So I was looking for something obvious like that.
Yeah.
And what you are giving me is that you were this shy, somewhat self-doubting person in your head, but had created for yourself a carapace of the girl with Craic, the girl we now see.
Yeah.
If we follow you as I do on Insta, wow, you are doing this in spades every single day. Hey, here I am. But inside you, you now are a settled person.
Yeah.
Now, how did that come about?
Well, I think, I suppose I struggled for so long with like, oh my God, is that a creation? Is that like a false person, I suppose? So there was definitely like the two sides of the coin. And I suppose I now feel like they're the same. Like I'm deeply sensitive, and I'm also great crack. And actually, I think maybe instead of trying to shove away my sensitivity, I hated it. I felt like that sensitivity made me weak, made me needy, made me like smaller, I suppose. When in actual fact, I think my sensitivity allows me to attune to people in a way that makes me good at my job, that makes I can help people feel comfortable. The things that I hated in myself or that I didn't want to be part of me, I have welcomed, and so they haven't overtaken me. I thought if I admitted, oh my God, I am quite sensitive, that I'd literally melt into a puddle of tears, whereas actually what I realise is that that's quite a strength. It's a part of me. It's not the whole part of me.
How do you ensure that the self-compassionate you, which is now the you understanding yourself better and appreciating the kindness and the empathy shown to you by others, doesn't become self-indulgence?
That's a very good question. And I think I probably did do that for a couple, like when I was deep in it, I was... like I've got an addictive personality. I was basically addicted to healing myself. And then I realized that essentially I was pressing pause on actually living and undermining my ability to be in the world and take knocks and come back from them. And I think there's a woman called Glennon Doyle who has a book called Untamed, and she talks about parenting which I think can apply to anybody really, but I remember thinking of it as this snowplow parenting. So this generation attempting to do or not do the wrongs that had been done to them by parents who were not as emotionally or psychologically attuned. Like, we'll show you what like modern day parenting looks like. And she's like, actually, this snowplow where you're essentially going in front of your kid, clearing every obstacle out of the way so that they can have a smooth transition. And there's something beautiful in the intention of that, wanting to protect your kid from pain and hurt and falls and all of the things. And then you realise you rob the kid of the resilience of knowing that they can be kicked, that they can get back up, that they can fail, that they can learn, that they are not made of glass. And I think my being in touch with my sensitivity, and I was a little I started to go, oh my God, I just need to keep away from anything that might disrupt my homeostasis, that might like rattle me. And actually, what I lost was like that appetite and that reminder that I love getting knocked down and getting back up, that's actually living. So you can kind of do the healing to the detriment of living. And I want the scrapes and I want the stories. I don't want to sit at home in meditation pose thinking I've got it all figured out and being at peace, but like I may as well be dead.
The off on off on off, eventually off boyfriend.
Yeah.
We next get, are there a few people before we meet your husband?
Well, I go travelling. I'm like living my life in Dublin. I'm kind of, doing my thing.
Give us the best and the worst travel moments, because you did quite a lot of travelling.
I did do quite a lot of travelling. I spent a year in Australia. And honestly, again, now I look back, I'm like, I really hope neither of my two daughters follow in my footsteps. I was with there was four of us in total. And we bought a van that was obviously completely unvetted from these lads who had driven the arse out of it. It was hardly fit for the road, called Scotty. We like pooled our resources up in Cairns in the East Coast. Scotty, a yellow van. We were like, yeah, this is a bit of us. It was basically a high ace with a mattress in the back. And we slept for 3 months up and down the coast. And we would like park up in all sorts of places. And rather than pay the camping fees, we would just park up on the side of the road outside somebody's house. They could have been a serial killer. Nobody came for us, which I don't know whether that says more about us or them. But we would just like drape a towel, open the door because it was roasting, open the door of the high ace van, 4 women with legs dangling out of the thing so as not to sweat to death. And we would go to sleep.
Great. Was that the best of it?
Oh, sorry.
Or the worst
that
of it?
was the best. I think that was the best of it,
I think it was the best of it too.
Just this feeling of not, like being kind of invincible and unaware of danger.
It has that echo of your very first memory.
Yeah.
Being in the car with the caravan behind you.
Yeah.
With the mattress in that where people slept.
Freebird,
Freebird.
Yeah.
So you come back to Ireland and eventually you find a sort of career of kinds.
That's what my parents say. And eventually you kind of work.
And when did you come to London?
I came to London in 2012, maybe, over and back. Kind of pretending I lived in London. Moved officially when we got married in 2014. So, but up until that point, I was like, had signed with an agent, pretended I live here, would get on the plane, come over. Yeah, I can do a meeting. I was like, but I couldn't afford it.
And you were into fashion in the beginning of presenting.
I was. Yeah.
And when does your husband is called?
Roy.
And where do we meet him?
We meet him in a pub through friends. One of my best friends and his best friends met, married, and yeah.
And how old are you both at that stage?
I think I'm 29 because I remember he threw a 30th birthday party for me, which felt like,
this is it.
I think this is it.
Can you remember the first encounter with him?
I can.
What was it like, the moment?
So I remember meeting him in a bar. So I lived in Dublin, upstairs from like opposite a pub called Sheehan's, and my friend rang and she's like, we're downstairs. I looked out the window. I was waiting for a friend who was visiting from Madrid, and she was coming with lomo ham. I thought charcuterie was the height of style, and I was like, this now is a bit of me. I'm basically Carrie Bradshaw. She's bringing me cheese and meat in her backpack, and we're going to drink wine. Like, who the fuck am I? And I looked out the window. He's there with my two friends, and they're like, oh, we're here. And he's like a bit awkward, I would say. And I said, I've got, like, my friend's coming. She then messaged me to say she was late. So I said, oh, grand, I'll come across the road. So we came across the road, and I thought, my God, he is mad about himself, isn't he? I was really like struck by his kind of arrogance and like intrigued, but a bit allergic, I would say. And then anyway, we all had a great night collectively together. That was kind of spontaneous and raucous and great. And then that was it. So we exchanged numbers. He messaged me the following day, was like, it was really lovely to meet you. And I remember being home going, I don't know whether I really like him or I really don't. And so I thought, fine. Didn't really think anything of it. Gyles, 6 months. 6 months. And I remember I was kind of on the scene. I wasn't really interested in anything. And then I get a message out of the blue. It was a Friday evening. I was in the bath, and I think maybe I was kind of like, oh, you know. And he messaged, he's like, I know this is really out of the blue, but would you like to go for a drink? So I waited a couple of weeks, but I remember him ringing me.
Did you not reply to that?
I did reply. I said, I'm really busy for the next like couple of weeks, but like
idea.
week commencing, like
Maybe let's do something.
Why not? And so, and then I remember him ringing me, and I was like, what? This feels very adult and confident. I was like, oh, that's kind of bold in a world where people were like, lads were hiding behind text messages and all of that sort of thing. I thought, oh, this is ballsy. So we had organised where to meet, And I remember wanting to cancel because I had a spot. And I was like, I just couldn't be bothered. And I rang my friend.
Spot, by the way?
It was on my chin. They're always on the chin, Gyles. And so
sometimes on the nose,
you
or
don't want
indeed
those.
on the lip.
Sore,
yeah.
painful, those ones. Very painful. But she was a chin one. Anyway, I remember wearing a oversized white shirt, like a man's shirt, and a striped tights. And my friend who had introduced us was like encouraging me maybe to change that outfit. And I thought, you know what? If he's not into it, it's like I'm very much for smoking them out early. I was over kind of the pretense. So I had said to her, I really am not in the mood. Can I just cancel? She was like, get your arse down the stairs and across to that pub, wherever it was. And I went in with kind of no expectations, truthfully. And all of the ideas that I had about him within the space of one gin and tonic had kind of changed completely. So I had him as a kind of slightly macho, like, bro. And he almost immediately just was bright and sensitive and attuned and funny and like alive. Like, and I remember him going to the bathroom and I was like, shit, this is not how I saw this day going. And we spent the entire evening together. We went from the pub to another pub to a restaurant to another pub. It was like one of those things where we just didn't want it to end, and it felt so kind of comfortable. And that was kind of it. And it was so bizarre to me because I had never had somebody who like actively was like really caring, but like heart on his sleeve, kind of.
So what he is doing, because you're still in this manic phase, he is touching beyond that to the inner you that's been there all the time, that hasn't been recognised before.
Yes.
So he sees that,
yeah,
and he gets the reward, because how long have you been together?
We've been together, it's actually our anniversary on Saturday. So like 16 years.
Lovely. And you have 2 daughters?
2 daughters,
That's the way it goes in your family.
4 and 8, yeah. That's the way it goes, yeah, exactly.
What does love mean? Are you in love with him still?
Yeah.
So describe that. What is love? What is love now, after 16 years, anniversary on Saturday, 2 daughters?
I think it changes over the years, but it is, I guess it is being like seen and being held. And actually, I will often say to him, I kind of need to be adored. And sometimes I want that in my own home, not just on Instagram. I think the idea of actually seeing a person and the things that we think of as natural to them, reminding yourself that they are special. So I think we can overlook and take for granted the things that are inherent to a person. And for me, that kind of kindness. And I mean, an example, I went out on Saturday and when I'm out, and it doesn't happen that often. And it was a bottomless brunch and margaritas were had. And the following day I was like, I'm going to sit this one out. And I said, I'm going to stay in bed. We were due to go for lunch. And he went to the gym and he came back with a juice for me. He rang and was like, do you want a juice? And I said, yeah, sure. And he brought the juice back and he said, I got it without lemon. And I kind of thought, what is he talking about? And I was like, cool. And then it only landed with me afterwards that I had said weeks before, I've been having these celery and lemon shots and the lemon is making me break out. And Christina's allergic to citrus and maybe there's a sensitivity to citrus. And he remembered even when I didn't remember myself. And I think that in a very humdrum thing to me is being held in someone's mind and heart and being cared for in an everyday way, I guess.
I love it. Being held and being heard.
Mm-hmm.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end now. What's it like having red hair?
It's wonderful now.
Or was it sometimes hell when you were young?
You kind of want to be like everyone else. And when I was growing up, Britney Spears was the epitome of sexy, glamorous, fabulous.
Are there advantages, though, to having red hair?
I mean, you get caught when you mitch at school. So I was the only one that would be tracked down. And I remember tackling my maths teacher afterwards and being like, are you fucking joking me? You knew we were a crew together. And she was like, you're the only one I could identify from 150 yards. So, but also, like, I think that's made me feel quite special in ways. So it was initially it was alien and awful and also special, which is quite a heady mix as a youngster. But it's great.
Do your parents feel you've settled down and achieved?
I think they do. I think they're relieved and also always a little bit terrified. But they will say things like, we did not know, how it would end. And I'd be thinking, underneath all the madness, like, there was no doubt in my mind. I was like, I had shit to do.
And you've built an incredible freelance career as a broadcaster, presenter, television host,
working
podcaster,
for everyone, always on,
author, always on, fashion stylist, fashion guru.
Inside.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to say, I adore following you.
Thanks,
you give me energy every morning. You are my daily boost. Who needs a sugar rush when Angela Scanlon is available?
He's in the arm.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 quick questions now from your early years particularly, but really from anywhere in your life. When I say this phrase, you've got to give me what comes into your head immediately.
This is
a moment of joy, Angela.
A moment of joy. Okay, being in my granny's house with all of my sisters and my uncle Sean, who's no longer with us, and he would open the sunroof and we would all crawl all over and out of the sunroof and we would drive down the Hairy Road, which was this tiny little road with grass in the middle of it that we named the Hairy Road. And we were high on Fanta and Wham bars and we were joyful.
Yeah, I love it. You're often on the move.
Often I am always on the move.
A moment of sadness that comes into your head.
The death of my granny, my mum's mum, Cecilia, we called her Dolly. Well, we called her Granny, but she was known as Dolly. And the day that she died, I have such a clear memory of that, of knowing, being picked up by our neighbour, being brought home, stopping at a shop to get a card, like this weird chain of events where nothing was being said, but something had changed. And then I remember going home and meeting my mum at the door, and I think Margaret had told us just before then that Granny had died suddenly, and I saw my mum, I think, as a kind of human, I suppose, she was heartbroken, and I think it was the first time that I saw a Craic, I suppose. She was the captain of the ship, and the captain can't cry, you know. So I think now I'm like, all I want to do is hug that version of her who really needed to be held by someone. She had two brothers. She was the only daughter, and I think that, you know, changed her massively.
And what in your life have you learnt? What's life taught you, Angela Scanlon?
That, although I want, and like there's themes here, like I want a big life, I want it exciting, I want like zest and, I don't know, confetti at the graveside, that actually the kind of small, quiet, intimate things in the everyday are the things that really make up a life, and the only thing that really matters.
Well, I think where you are now, unless you've fooled us all, you've achieved that, because in your work you give us that zest. I shall certainly be at your graveside with the confetti.
Thank you.
Making it whoopee for you.
Whoop.
So you've done all that, but at the same time, I think through your husband and through your children and your new attitude to the world, you've also given yourself the solid peace. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to cry now. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Scanlon. Lovely. Oh.
I loved.
Oh.
Thank you. Oh.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. If you did, please like and subscribe, because that helps us spread the word and more people can watch Rosebud, my favourite podcast, and I hope it's yours too. Bye for now.